Hey everybody, it's Christopher Not Walking. Welcome to the Dirty Nerdy Show. Today we have a special guest, Jiggy Wiggy ASMR is here.
What's going on, guys?
What's good, man? So, I just want to jump right into it because I've seen you around for a very long time. The moment I got into Discord and, I found the moment I got the invite to the ASMR Discord over at the Reddit Discord.
Yeah, subreddit.
Yeah, I met you over there, and you were just like the coolest dude. And I was like, how do I be this cool? Because let me tell you what this guy does. He'll go in there and play like the strangest like instrument you've never heard of.
Oh yeah,
in VC. And just everyone will be captivated, and it's always fun. He always knows how to generate a good time, and it's great to have you on.
my gosh, I feel so embellished right now. I feel like, well, I'm very. You know how to flatter someone. I'll give you that, Chris. I'll give you that. Yeah, no, I haven't done that in a really long time, but I remember dragging out my big hammered dulcimer. That just you hit it with the hammer, and it's like the most beautiful sounding instrument. But yeah, no, I think that's what you're talking about, the hammered dulcimer that I was playing that one time.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? And I'm a musician, but I have never heard of that in my life. And I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful. I'm very lucky to have it.
So, how'd you get involved with the community, with the ASMR thing? How'd you find it?
Well, this started out maybe senior year of college or maybe earlier. This must have been 6 months before I came onto YouTube. So I'm a lonely guy. A lot of people are. And I found comfort and immersion in these Japanese ASMR things. And, I don't know exactly where they originated from. They just kind of existed, and people would kind of trade them around in the US over the internet. And the really wonderful thing about them is that the ASMR created this really immersive setting where you felt like you were physically there with that person or with that girl. And that was really wonderful to me. And so when I originally started, it was sort of to give back to that community. Well, that community as in this Reddit community that did audios as well. And it was the similar sort of deal where it was very immersive, but it was in English instead of Japanese. And so these wonderful people putting their heart and soul into these audios, I wanted to give back to them by making some of my own. And I really don't remember how well received they were. But it was a while until I moved them onto YouTube, where I started posting the things that I previously made on Reddit, and then everything after that. But with YouTube is where it really took off.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different like ball game once the eyes of YouTube picks up on you. But I'm interested in the lonely aspect because I found ASMR during a very similar time in my life, where I was going down this road of just like feeling very alone. And do you think that there's a big correlation between being lonely and listening to ASMR?
Is that a more polite way of asking if it's about sex?
No, not at all. Because loneliness and the sexual aspect is very different. I think seeking comfort is not necessarily a sexual thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They're not. I understand what you're saying. I absolutely think so. I think ASMR is a lot about the intimate aspect, whether it's a vocal ASMR or triggers or objects, like tapping a book, wrinkling a certain kind of paper. It's all close to the mic because that creates this kind of space where something's being done very close to your ear. And we only do that in real life with people whom we trust a lot. So I think that sort of feeling is automatically sort of curing of loneliness.
Yeah. Since you brought up the sexual aspect of it, what do you think of the sexual side of ASMR? Because it's very divisive amongst the community. Some people are for it, some people are against it, and some people are like me and don't care either way. So where do you stand on that?
Well, this goes back to Reddit. Something very strange and interesting that I found. On the ASMR subreddit, girls reign supreme all the time. The only place where males tend to really get a foothold is unintentional ASMR. There's a separate subreddit for that, and I see some guys on that. But boys are very often downvoted to the point where they can never, ever reach the heights on the top posts like the girls can. And it's a very, very interesting dynamic that for a subreddit to have that. Really, the only other example of subreddits that do that are not safe for work subreddits, because guys are clicking through there looking for girls. And so when they see other guys, they're like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And against Reddit's, rules, they would downvote that post, because it's not to their personal taste. It's not what they're looking for. But the only reason that would be the case in the ASMR subreddit is if it was a sort of similar mindset that it was inherently sexual to them. And it is met with a lot of haste and denials. But a lot of people are under the impression that the reason why boys are downvoted so much in the ASMR subreddit is because it's just other boys who are the audience members or the Reddit users looking for girls. Now, when it comes, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's sexual in the more straight up concept, like just any ASMR video. You aren't gonna have people sort of, doing the business with it, but but it seems to be a gender specific thing for some people. I would say more boys than girls. It would seem that a lot of boys feel that uncomfortable getting triggered from ASMR male performers.
I have to agree there. I really do, because when I started listening, for the longest time, I wouldn't, because of the closeness factor, and it wasn't like a sexual thing, but it was because there was this closeness factor where, you had someone like right up in your ear. For the longest time, I was not comfortable listening to guys. I had to get over that, and it took me a while. So I completely see what you're saying, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Continue.
No, I should probably have some closing thoughts on that. It just depends on how you define sexual. If that means that it's gender specific, like people, like a lot of guys only watch girls and not other guys do ASMR, I think that's totally true. And that comes down to being comfortable with somebody being in your space, because ASMR is so immersive. A lot of guys are only comfortable with girls being that intimate and close with them because they associate that kind of space with romance. Not necessarily sex, but romance. So that is sexuality, of course. But I would say that it is inherently about sexuality for a lot of people. Not necessarily about sex, as in pleasure and that sort of thing. But sexuality, that's what I believe for many. And like I said, that can be much, much different for girls. And, you know, I've had a lot of friends who are girls tell me that they cuddle with a lot of their friends who are also girls. I can not see myself doing that with any of my guy friends. It's just something that men are extremely phobic about.
I don't know about that. We could start a trend right here.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, girls are just more open, more open to being emotionally vulnerable with the same sex, and not so much with guys. But maybe that's just because when we were young, we experienced a huge trend of homophobia, especially through school. Like when I was in middle school, like nobody wanted to be called gay, so they called everybody else gay, you know, that kind of thing. But going back to the original question, I think sexuality in ASMR is fine because it's intimate. And you have to be comfortable with somebody being intimate with you, whether it's in real life or through an immersive experience like ASMR.
Yeah. And I'm like I've said before, I'm impartial on it. But one thing that does get me is like some of the role plays are completely unrealistic.
Oh, yeah.
Where you've got like, oh honey, have you had a bad day? And like anybody who's ever been like in like a real relationship, it's not always that nice when you come home, yo.
Right. Well, a lot of that stuff is written by other people. I write most of my own scripts thus far. But sometimes people have to work with what they're given. It's just like an actor putting his hands into a director.
Yeah.
And you just got to trust them. You got to trust that they're writing something good and that you'll be able to convincingly say it.
So what is your process when you're doing your role plays? How do you prepare to get into these characters and become these people?
Typically, it's just the same persona, with a few exceptions. A lot of these, especially the earlier ones, which is what I take great pride in, a lot of these are personal experiences or inspired by feelings that I've had, or experiences that I've had. So that's why a lot of them come from the heart. They're written as I've experienced them, or as I've fantasized about them, or as I've thought about them. And yeah, I would say that the script writing process can be the hardest for me, but when I have this experience that just inspires me completely, I just write it all out, and it's the most natural stuff that I could possibly write. The recording part's super easy for me, even though I re-record a lot to get something right. Writing something that's good sometimes takes me a while, which is honestly why a lot of times there are content gaps. And we can talk about content gaps with me. It's what I'm infamous for. But that's one of the reasons why, is because sometimes I just can't put stuff on paper well enough.
Yeah.
But as for the process after the recording, the editing comes, and when it comes to the editing, a lot of my earlier audios are stereo spaces. So it's like a three-dimensional space that I walk around in, and people can, when they're listening, they can feel that I'm either on their right side or right in front of them or on their left side. And that has to do with just the way I block it out in my head. And that's why it's important for me to be inspired sometimes, is because I know exactly how it was in that moment for me to feel that person, to be with that person. So that's how I edit it as well, so that they hear it as I experienced it, or as I imagined it, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, that whole style with the role plays being audio only, and not visual has to do with my roots in what I loved about ASMR when I originally found it. You can't really have that immersion if you have video. Um, I guess you can have a binaural experience like those haircut ones where you can see the guy going around you and you can see and you can hear where he's going as well, or where she is going.
Yeah.
But with audio only and no video, you have free reins to travel. You have the free reins to move. Like the listener's perspective is as it's dictated or implied in the audio. Like you can say, me as a character, I can say, come over here and sit on the bed with me. And the listener is hinted that that's where their perspective is going. Like with the footsteps, and then you hear the bed squeak and they're like, okay, I'm sitting down with him now. You can't really do that with video.
One of my favorite videos, and I always try to, try to when I'm doing these, I think back and I'm like, oh yeah, well, maybe I'm a bit like that too, because I'm thinking right now, and one of my favorite videos that I've ever watched was a Heather Feather video, where there was no real video to it, but she was like kind of like underneath like this blanket fort thing, and you just heard the sounds from that, and there was like no like storyline, nothing, but it was just great, and I slept like a rock that night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. If you're trying to go to sleep, I think it's probably easier not to have to look at a screen to see what video's happening, I don't know. It's just a style. And the ASMR that I was inspired to, make my own stuff from, had these little anime girl avatars, like to represent whom you're supposed to pretend like you're with in that role play. And that's where the whole, Jiggy Wiggy anime character in the thumbnail thing came from.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of your favorites right now. Who are you listening to that you just absolutely adore?
Well, I'll make a confession. I don't listen to ASMR all that much, but I know I really like Caroline ASMR.
She's great.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a few times, her and I. Well, not talked, but like messaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't know. I listen to, or I used to listen to a lot of people on Reddit, but they're not YouTubers. And a lot of people come and go. So right now, I don't have a very big list for you. It used to be larger. But my place as an ASMR content creator is not anything typical. It's not triggers. It's not anything like that. Most of the enjoyment, or rather what defines me, is my stories, or rather the way I tell stories if it's somebody else who writes the script. The ASMR and the tingles tend to come from my mouth sounds. And I'm sure that there are other things in some of my audios that have caused tingles, but it's mostly just my voice and mouth sounds. So yeah, I mean, I don't listen to that many just tingle list ASMR videos.
That's cool though, because like every now and then I find myself, taking a break, because there is this like tingle immunity fear that I have, that if I listen to it for too long, it stops working, and that's like no good.
Really? Has that ever happened to you?
It did, and then I stopped listening for like a month, and then I went back to it, and it was great. Another reason is I felt like I was using ASMR as kind of like an emotional crutch. Anytime I would feel like down or anything, I would just listen to ASMR. But I noticed that I weren't really dealing with issues.
Right.
And within that month break, I just, I purposely, stayed away from ASMR, so I had to confront those issues, and I think I came out better for it.
That's great. Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk real quick about equipment, because you said your mouth sounds or your tingles. So I'm interested in what kind of equipment you're using.
Well, I would say that a resounding weapon of choice for ASM artists would be the large diaphragm condenser type of microphone. They're very sensitive. They're very deep sounding. The specific one I used to use was the Audio-Technica 2020. Same kind of microphone as the one I'm using now, large diaphragm condenser. I'm not entirely sure how a lot of ASM artists do it, but if I had to guess, they go uncompressed. It's just straight audio, just into the audio interface, or if they're using a consumer-grade microphone like a Blue Yeti or something like that, they just plug it right in to the USB socket. But yeah, right now I'm using, let's see, it's an AKG C214. And I think it's a studio vocal mic. Large diaphragm condensers are studio microphones, not for use in like live settings or anything like that. As for miscellaneous equipment, I have studio monitors or speakers rather. I typically, actually, you know what? I don't edit using, when I'm doing like audio role plays, I never edit while listening through these studio monitors. I always plug in headphones because that's how the listener will be listening to it.
Yeah, makes sense.
But other than that, I have this compressor here that I'm using right now for this interview, but that's just because I know that like it might get loud, like I was laughing earlier. So if it was uncompressed, then the audio range would be so wide that people listening to my mumbling or whispering voice like I am right now would suddenly be surprised by the huge spike in volume. So yeah, I have a little compressor here if I'm ever recording songs or anything like that, but I mostly don't really use it for ASMR videos.
Yeah. This is the last question, and it's kind of a big one because you showed me that video last night from that girl, and I wanted to give you.
Oh, right.
I wanted to give you a chance to properly, explain the situation and respond if you felt like it. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I sent it to you because I thought it'd be like a juicy thing to talk about because I never gave an official response for this. This YouTuber, whom is, as I understand it, relatively popular, called Basic, uploaded this video about why I can't stand sexual ASMR channels. And she talked about like some criticisms. It's mostly a comedy channel. But where the comedy and the real criticism lies, I'm not entirely sure. So I wasn't entirely sure how to take it. But basically, she used examples from my channel and like some other people's channel, like, God, I forget, The Grey Knight, I think, whom is a sexual ASMR channel, as I believe. I suppose I shouldn't say that as a matter of fact, or else I'll get blasted too. But anyway, basically, she was defining me and my channel as a sexual ASMR channel, which, I took offense to. And I commented on her video, and I'm going to find it. Hold on. I commented on her video telling her that, I think your criticisms are fair, but I believe that it's not really fair to label my whole channel as a sexual ASMR channel when that, like any video of mine that could be described as that or perceived as that only constitutes like 5 or 10% of my videos at most. And I don't have that many videos on my channel. Okay, here we go. I found it. So I commented on her video saying, I think your criticisms are fair, like all that stuff I said before. Most of what I do is boyfriend role plays, yes. However, believe it or not, my goal is not to arouse my listeners. It's to make them feel loved, appreciated, supported, etc. And she responded to that saying, you know what? I didn't take the time to look at the other things you posted on your channel, so I'm sorry for that. A lot of this came up either in my recommended or when I was searching for sexual role plays for this video. I guess I'll address it in my next video. So she basically admitted that she didn't do any research on my channel and just said, oh, this is a sexual ASMR role play or something I think is. I'm just going to label his whole channel as that. And the really screwed up thing about it is she didn't delete the video. So it's basically, at first it was unintentional slander because it wasn't true. And anybody who looks at that video who hasn't seen my channel will think that of me. And it's not true. And she even admitted it wasn't true. But she I guess, kept the video up because she thought that was fine.
Did she go back and correct her mistakes?
What she did was in her next video at the very end, it was like really half-assed. It said like this one person who I criticized in my last video isn't, as bad as I said. He does like this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. So, it was at the very end of the video where pretty much no one would see it. And like, it was riddled with spelling errors. So she obviously just did it like oh, whatever. But again, it's just, if I was really that upset about it, I probably would have made an official response video. But I don't know. I didn't. I just didn't feel it was that important. But it does continue to give people the wrong impression about me. Again, anybody who sees it who isn't familiar with my channel will just sort of throw me into that bunch and say, ew, sexual ASMR roleplay channel, if that's how they think about them. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
And I don't know. I think anyone that would, just assume that automatically are probably people that would assume that a majority of ASMR channels are like strictly sexual to begin with. So I wouldn't worry too much.
Not really. I mean, like you said, it's a very divided thing where like I saw in the comments like, ew, no, this does not represent us, some ASMR content creator. And it made me feel kind of like dirty and ashamed of myself, even though I wasn't, red-handed or anything like that. It still made me feel that way because that's how people thought of me.
Yeah.
Like, ew, no, this guy doesn't represent us. I was like, oh my God, that hurts. But I don't know. They say that any publicity is good publicity, even if it's negative. But at this point, it probably steers people away from my channel. But I just take it in stride. Yeah. I would have hoped that she had deleted the video or taken it down. But I guess she either didn't think about it or just didn't really care. So I just have to live with that.
And that's really unfortunate. From what I I did some quick research on her, and she seems to be very young, and young people make mistakes. So, I'm not gonna judge the kid, but like you gotta correct those things. You know what I mean? You can't just go around and try and ruin people like that.
Right, and I think H3H3 Ethan from H3H3, funny guy if you've never seen him. He, like, as part of his podcast, it was some quote from like, I think it was this Boogie 2988 podcast where he was with that guy.
Yeah.
He was talking about like you have a responsibility not to give out false information if you're like if you're I don't know, not villainizing people or vilifying people, but however your stance is on a certain subject, if you're making a video about it, you have a responsibility to be, well, right about your stuff. And if you're not, then you need to correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you're popular, because it'll reach a lot of people. The person who originally created it, the stuff that you're commenting on, they're going to see it.
Yeah.
So you have a responsibility, and I don't know, maybe in her growth, she hasn't really endowed that responsibility yet, but it's all fine. I mean, again, if she ends up deleting it, that's great, and that'd be wonderful, but I'm not too terribly worried about it. I'm just going to continue doing my thing.
Yep. And you're great at doing your thing, and I want to thank you again for coming on the show today. It really
Absolutely
mean a lot to me that you would come on the show, because I like I said, I remember going into that VC that one time, the first night I met you, and you were just like the coolest. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the Dirty Nerdy Show.
It was super fun to be here. I'm glad. I saw a lot of your other interviews, and I was like, I want to have fun. I want to have fun like this. I want to be on it.
Well, you're welcome to come back anytime you want. We're happy to have you.
Awesome.
Guys, listen. Make sure you subscribe to Jiggy Wiggy ASMR, okay? Links will be down below. And with that in mind, my name is Christopher Not Walking.
I'm Jiggy Wiggy.
That's Jiggy Wiggy. This is the Dirty Nerdy Show, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.